One. Evolutionary or Hardcore 2.0, number 57 coming your way. Today's going to be a fun one. We're talking about PharmaQo Labs, and we're going to give you an introduction about this one. And we haven't done a podcast about PharmaQo before, and they're a really, really good one. They're one that I've used for the past, I'd say, 3 or 4 years, and they've been around a long time. And in this podcast, we're going to go over talking about PharmaQo Labs. We're going to talk about our favorite oral and injectables. We're going to talk about other oral injectables that may be your favorites that you can try. We're going to discuss some stacks of their products, and we're going to talk a little bit about non-steroids that they also sell very briefly. But we're mostly in this podcast going to be talking about specifically the oral injectables, because we know that you all out there really like when we talk about this stuff, and not many podcasts do, and that's what we like to do on here. But PharmaQo, look, at the end of the day, they are a really, really good lab. And when I was first using their products, the first one I used from them was their testosterone. And I used their testosterone at a low dose. I ran some of their Equipoise with it. And let me tell you something, my freaking, like, I felt like a beast on that stack. I felt amazing. I was like, man, this is some damn good gear. So then I started trying some of their orals, their Anavar, their, what else? I tried their T-Bowl. I was like, man, this is good stuff. Like, this is legitimate stuff. And it was the first couple times I've used them. So I'm always skeptical the first couple times I use a new brand. But then, I started talking to other people on the forums that I trust, some other vets, and they'd be like, yeah, well, I've been using it too for like 6 months, a year, and they've really been good to me. Now, oh, you're using it, they're good to you. And I'm like, yeah. So then we both started using them more and more. And over the past 2-3 years, I've definitely been using quite a bit of their products, and I've been very, very impressed with it. And one of the things I like, if you listen to the show, I'll bring in Mobster in a second, but one of the things I really respect about a good quality brand is I can purchase it and I know what I'm getting, because I got burned when I first started using steroids. I can remember I got Primo and I spent like $1,200 on Primo. I was so excited to run Primo, heard so many good things about it, and it was a waste of a cycle. And I was like, what the hell is this? This stuff is garbage. And then a couple years later, I tried Primo again from a legitimate brand, and that was real Primo. That wasn't fake Primo like the other one. And I had really, really good results. So I was like, damn, I realized then how important it was to use a real brand. But back in those days when I first started, the way that we had to buy steroids was we had to basically buy it from like an international place, send them money via Western Union, and hope they didn't rip you off. And there was a good chance they would rip you off. But if they didn't rip you off, then they'd rip you off when they'd send you underdosed or bunk gear. So that's how it was in those days. Nowadays, you've got PharmaQo, and they sell legitimate gear. They provide it to really good reseller sources who then you can purchase it from. And if you come on the forum, you can check out the best resellers of PharmaQo. And you're getting good quality product. You're getting good shipping. The source isn't going to just take your money and run off with it, So I have that confidence when I buy something. It's just like, imagine when cars first started being sold. You go buy a car, and then the first day or second day it break, and you have no recourse. Sorry, it broke. You got to buy a new one. Now we have lemon laws. You can go buy a car now, and I think it's like 30 days in most states, where if your car breaks within that 30 days, there's something called a lemon law, so that a car company, an auto person, can't rip you off. Well, with steroids, there is no lemon law. You buy fake steroids, you send some dude around the world money, it's gone. So you got to hope he sends it to you. So that's the nice thing about PharmaQo. Their resellers are legitimate, and you don't got to worry about any of that shit. So that's what I like. I feel secure, Mobster. I feel secure when I buy from PharmaQo, and that's what I need when it comes to steroid use. I'm not putting junk in my body, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, look, guys, Steve and I have talked about the history of the sport, and the sport unfortunately does include using steroids, and specifically oral and injectable steroids. And we touch upon the history from time to time. And I know that you guys might find the history part boring, but trust me, this is one of those things where, because we've been doing this a long time and because we're not new to this, we know just how bad shit can be, right? So on other shows, when we've discussed this, we've talked about Mexican labs and then the Mexican labs getting raided. We've seen videos on YouTube where and this was probably a good example, rather perversely, Steve, where the lab was a person, literally a person's kitchen, and they'd made some sort of step towards hygiene by putting up a load of polythene on the cabinets and on the countertops and whatever else, and it was their lab. Okay, so I'm old enough that I used to talk to, and he's still a buddy of mine, a quote unquote steroid guru, well known here in the UK, lesser known now than perhaps he used to be, where you actually paid a slightly higher premium because you knew that he could be trusted, and he was importing his product or bringing the product into the country quite legally, as it happens, Steve, paying the VAT, the tax on it, and everything, by a Russian source, and this would be Iranian and Pakistani and Bulgarian testosterones and so on and so forth. So these were literally coming from those countries with proper labs, actual pharmaceutical companies. We go from, we know that some of you, for example, that have TRT, get your products via compounding labs. And we know that even they can vary. I saw a video yesterday, Steve, where professional bodybuilder said that he's had a product from a compounding lab and he'd had a product that came from a pharmaceutical company, an actual big billion-dollar company. And he said even then he could tell the difference, right? So there's a phrase that a British, or it might have been an American, I'm not sure, politician, which gets quoted, and it's, you've never had it so good. And how can I say that now? Right? Because people still talk about underground labs and this, that, and the other. Listen, you have availability of product that you've never had throughout the whole of PED use history. Back in the day, it was Hobson's choice. What they had is what you got. We've talked about people literally buying out the trunks of cars. And again, those Mexican lab stories from 1980 were the same. You go out to the fella in the car park at the back of the gym, and he would open up the trunk of his car, and what he had is what you got. He might not have SIP, he might only have Enemphate, he might only have prop. You got what was available. You didn't have a choice. If you wanted a choice, you had to fucking wait. Now you can get this stuff in days. Okay. I mean, I even mentioned another show recently, Steve, where one sector of our market, specifically Australia, some of the product was perfectly sound. It's Chinese raws. It's been properly produced, etc., etc. But the fucking labels look like they've been done on a child's printing kit. At best, they are literally a label that's been done on an inkjet printer in-house. There's no holograms and so on and so forth. We're looking at PharmaQo right now as we talk for this show. How good do the products look, Steve? They look like they've come from a billion-dollar pharmaceutical company. And I've talked about just the difficulty of having a product look like that. This is not an easy task. You and I can design a label for a steroid on a home printer, and it can actually be kind of okay. 3 colors, nice diagrams, high quality printing, but there's no holograms, there's no barcode, there's no batch number that's embossed into the paper, not just printed onto the surface of the paper, not pre-printed, which I've also seen. So all the fucking batch numbers are the same. How can you check then? You literally want the be embossed into it. That's difficult. A lot of UGLs won't bother with that. They will use the batch number like I've described it. If you're lucky, it's a different batch number every single time rather than solid. So all of these kind of things, just literally making a product look good is hard. And then you've got, and I've touched on this before, and this is actually, I made a note as you were talking, Steve, and I said, why we have approved sources. So why do we recommend certain brands on the forum? Why do we recommend certain sources on the forum? Because we know, Steve said something. I've had this. I've told the story before about getting given to me for free. So it's not like I was out any money, but given the remains, I think it was 100 pills left, Steve, in a Debo bowl. And I used these pills for probably the best part of 10 days. And there wouldn't have been 100, there would have been enough for 10 days. So how many pills that was? 30 days. For free. Yeah, you can have these until that stuff that you're waiting for arrives. Nothing. And then the legitimate product turned up. I just run out on the last day of the product was doing nothing for me. The legitimate product turns up, and instantly from the Friday to the Monday, so 4 days, I put on £4 pound a day for 4 days because the stuff before was fake. Now, if I had paid for that, I'd be so pissed off. So we have approved sources, we have brands we recommend, because even if we haven't personally used a brand, we know people that have. They've posted photographs of the product when it's arrived, what we call a touchdown. They've got the high resolution. You never used to even have that, Steve. High resolution photographs, videos of them holding, and you can see everything. They've turned the bottle round, the vial round on camera. You can see the holograms, you can see the barcodes, you can see the batch numbers for yourself. You can literally, when these products arrive, go online, either via the reseller, but normally via, in this case, the PharmaQo site, and confirm that this is a legitimate product made from this batch at this time by just checking for code verification. Steve, just literally, this is the recommended seller that we use. These are our products that we produced in-house ourselves, and so on and so forth. You couldn't even do that back in the day. We're sort of an approved source because we've actually let approved sources go when they've started out fantastic. They've sold solid products to members on the forums, and then for some reason or another, whoever the fuck's running the company is starting to fuck up, and products haven't arrived. People haven't had their refunds when product hasn't arrived. Products they're starting to copy products. So they had the legitimate product, and now they're bringing in fake products from somewhere else, and so on and so forth. So we've had to let them go. So we try to protect the members of our forum by, and again, especially in this case, Steve, as you said, because you're literally injecting a foreign substance, a lab-produced form of testosterone into your body. It needs to be top fucking quality. What do we see now that we back in the day was terrible, now is great? So, for example, allergic reactions to the oil that's been used. It should be this oil, but they were using a cheaper version, and people were having. I mean, one of the examples, Steve, how horrible is this? If you've got a peanut allergy, we have seen of labs in the past using peanut oil, which is cheap as fuck, versus, say, grapeseed oil, which seems to be the one that's the least likely to cause an allergic reaction. Back in the day, we would see examples of, and I've seen photographs quite horrendous, Steve, where someone's had to go to ER, emergency room in the States, A&E, accident and emergency in this country. They've either been, if they're lucky, they've been put on antibiotics, but if they've been unlucky, the photograph has been of the abscess cut out from their glute muscle and displayed for the perverse pleasure of us poor motherfuckers looking online and seeing what the fuck. Now, sometimes that's down to shitty technique. They're using poor needles, blunt stuff. They kept hitting the same lump of scar tissue. But as often as not, Steve, it was because the product they used was toxic as fuck, full of heavy metals, impurities, bacteria, God knows, right? And how often do we see that now? I can't tell you. Actually, I tell a lie. I tell a lie. In the last couple of weeks, I've seen one example, and that's probably the first example that I've seen for 5 years. And it still might be down to an allergic reaction or poor injection technique. That's the first example. Back in the day, 1980, 1990, especially 1990 when I first got online, this was like a once a week thing, Steve. You would see something once a week where some poor bastard was having issues. High fever, bacterial infection, antibiotics, and drawing up. They'd have to literally inject into the abscess and pull that crap out and wash it out. Ah, man. All the fucking time back in the day, literally once a week. And when you think, and that's probably just the poor motherfucker that's posted about it online. What about the poor bastards that didn't? And were embarrassed and realized that they'd fucking blown their money. And again, just literally, we've seen people sometimes selective scamming, product go out, and the next time they put a big order in because they trust this source and they've been done for $1,200, $2,000. Seen all that kind of stuff. How often does that happen now? Almost never. So the phrase that we used, and I'm touched on it earlier on, you've never read it so good, applies. So when we talk about brands like PharmaQo, it's because we know people that have used it, personal experience in Steve's case, that they've had great results on cycle. They've had zero issues with the sterility. People talk about post-injection pain, and again, sometimes that can be the oil, it can be there's too much alcohol that's been added to the oil just to kill the bacteria, and literally, if the numbers are off a tiny bit, it stings, and so on and so forth. So what ends up happening over time, a brand builds up its reputation for being like a pharmaceutical company in terms of the production that's gone into the label, to the vial, to the sterility, quality of product. on point when the product's been tested within fractions, sometimes a milligram, 2 milligrams off.
Yeah.
And that's
So we've
exactly what
had
you want.
let me just jump in on that. We've had people on the forum,
Yes,
veterans,
yes, out of their own pockets, Steve.
yeah, who have been, they've taken the gear and they've had it shipped off. Now I'm talking about these stupid lab kits, which you should never use, that you order
Oh, forget.
online and you bring it home and you match up the colors. I mean,
Yeah,
that's not how you test gear. They
no, no,
they
not
took the
properly.
gear, they took the gear and they had it sent off to get it professionally tested in a lab in a university setting
Yep.
to get the results. And the results not just tell them what's in the gear, because that's all those lab kits do if
Yeah.
you're lucky. It tells you what it is, the percentages, and the dosing and everything. So it tells you exactly what you're taking because that's what we need to know. And this guy, I thought when he did it, I thought he'd come back and start trouble. He's like, "Oh, this is only this much percentage. This is only." I thought because this guy, he seems like that. He's always looking to outsmart
He
people.
even said, Steve, he even said, I thought I would catch at least one company
Yeah,
out. And bearing in mind, listeners, for him to do this off his own back, there's a certain element of for his own peace of mind. Fine, spend your money, it's your money, do what you like, brother. Spend your money. But so that's his peace of mind. I brought good products, it's sterile, it's exactly what it should be, etc., etc. The other thing, and he actually said this in his reply. He said, I've gone out, I've got these products tested, and I kind of thought, back of my mind, at least one of these products is going to be off, at least one, maybe two. I think he had 10 products from different proof sources, different brands, again, different things, cypionate, enanthate, propionate, whatever. He had different things, different products. So it wasn't all the same. Could have done that, could have done all the same cypionate from 10 different sources, whatever else. And he said, I thought at least one, maybe two would be off, or the sterility issues or whatever. Nothing came back wrong. It was, and I've said this on another show, just to quote myself again, Steve, every single product he had tested was 96, 97, 98% accurate, meaning it was out by a few milligrams, 6 milligrams here, 2 milligrams there. So if it was meant to be 100 milligrams, it was 97, 98. It was meant to be 120, it was 112, 115, 116. So in other words, it was off a few percent, but there was not one single one of all the products he had tested that he could say failed the test. And bearing in mind, he would have been out of his own pocket, literally his own cash, the best part of $1,000, maybe more, to go off and get these tested. They're not even as expensive as they used to be. But to do that Roy test, look, the product that Steve's on about literally will say, this, I will test this product, which is supposed to be test cypionate, and it will literally just tell you that test cypionate is in that oil. That's all it does. It's green, it's come back as cypionate. It won't tell you the milligrams, it won't talk about sterility, it won't say about accuracy, and so on and so forth. So for a lab test, it's more expensive. And this fella spent that money out of his own pocket and was able to prove for his own peace of mind, and fortunately for us, because he posted results for the benefits of the members, that every single product that he bought from different sources, different resellers, different brands was on fucking
yeah.
point.
And it
Exactly
was
what
almost
we.
one of those situations. It's like those Karens in your neighborhood who walk around with their phones, taking pictures of everybody looking for
Yeah,
violations.
grass
That's
is
what he
too
was trying
long.
to. It's like he was
Yeah,
disappointed.
yeah,
He
yeah.
just said it straight up. Hey, I can't find
Almost.
anything. And then a couple, and then like over the course of months, he's been using the gear. So he's like, damn, this gear is legitimate. I'm gonna trust
Yes.
these guys. Maybe he thinks in his mind, man, maybe Steve and Mobster do have
Oh
my best interest. Maybe
man,
these guys are
we don't get
different.
paid enough, Steve. We don't get paid. You have to bribe me. It would cost the company $1,000, and even then, look, I've actually talked about Steve this in the pre-shows and stuff like this, personal, private conversations, and I said, look, I get it, right? I've been greedy for a buck back in the day, absolutely, absolutely, but my reputation 45 fucking years lifting, 20 something years doing the kind of stuff that Steve and I are doing now. And certainly with Evolutionary, I think I'm coming up 6, 7 years, Steve. My reputation means more to me than 100 or 200 or $300. Free product and fucking cash in the bank and shit. It just does, because I might get fucked off by that company tomorrow. And then I've got to rely on my reputation to go and work for someone else. Listen, so the reality of the situation is, right? I will tell you when I've used product, and I've literally done shows where I've said, I can, and I've done it literally physically while I'm talking into the microphone like I am now, and I've gone my hand on my heart, and I'm not big for doing this in real life, Steve. I don't have these conversations out with my pals and stuff when I'm walking around and going for fucking walks on them up the park or down the shops. I don't do it. But when I'm doing these shows, my reputation, Steve's reputation, means a fucking lot. It really does. Right. So if we say we've used X, we've used X. If I say I've taken Y and I had gains on it, I have taken Y and I've had gains on it. And I know, like Steve does, what to fucking look for. And I will say fucking because I want to emphasize it. What to look for in what makes a product sound, what makes that company's. Listen, right? Look at it this way, and I've done this way as well, Steve. The reputation of a company takes a long time. Huge, great, big car brands. Steve touched upon cars earlier on. Huge, great car brands. Volkswagen, Volvo. How many of these companies made major fuck up to the reputation when they got the whole Dieselgate thing? Some of them lost billions of fucking dollars in the value of the company overnight when the whole debacle with regards to the faking of the diesel numbers and the pollution that those cars were putting out. Literally, if they went into the test and the car could detect that it was being tested, it gave the right results on the test. But in real life, it did not. Massive amounts, billions of dollars in compensation, right? So you ruin your reputation by scamming people because that's what they did. And they fucked up and they knocked billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars across all the networks, all the different car companies. And it's taken that many years for them to gain their reputation back, and they're still paying out compensation because they fucked up. So the value of my reputation, the value of Steve's reputation, even the podcast, Evolutionary's reputation is huge. There will always be people that argue
the thing
against
is,
us.
if you listen to all the podcasts, Mobster and I are still peaking. Mobster's hitting personal records even almost at
Oh,
60.
mate. I've
I'm
got
hitting
800
personal
pound
records.
fucking Hatfield squat in my brain for Monday, and I'm 59 years of age, Steve, and I'm still a low dose guy.
That's the
59, and I want to
difference,
do
that
crazy shit.
we're still peaking. These other clowns, they peaked years ago. That's why
Ah,
they're so angry, and then
yes.
they're in declinism because they peaked years ago, and they're
Or
losers
they
and they're
have to talk
bums.
shit, Steve. They have to come
Yeah,
on. Classic one was the
they talk
guru
shit
that would
about
sit
everyone,
online,
and
yeah,
they
with
insult
his
people. We don't do
guns,
that
sitting there with his
here.
guns on camera, yeah.
Although I just did it, but other than that, we don't do it. All right, so all right, so let's talk about some.
But listen, seriously, this is the reason why we talk about brands like PharmaQo, why we're going to talk about their brand today, because we show respect to this company. We want to
Yes.
look at their products now. We're going to talk about some of their best products to you while we're doing the show and why we like them. Like I said, the presentation, the quality, the reputation, the length of time in the industry, and just the feedback from people that we know have used them, like Steve himself.
All right, guys. So let's check out some of the first couple, and I'm gonna leave the Anavar to you, Mobster, because you love Anavar. I'm gonna start with Anadrol, and we're just gonna do these kind of in order, ABC order. This way, you guys, if you want to go check out exactly what we're talking about, you can just go easily pull it up. So Anadrol 50. Look, it's easy, it's simple. You take 1 tab a day, 50 milligrams a day. Anadrol is one of those steroids that you run solo. You can just run it stacked, but I would recommend you run it solo, especially if it's the first time you've run it. And let me tell you something. Anadrol from PharmaQo is excellent for bulking and getting harder. It's interesting with Anadrol. It's a DHT derivative, but it also is great for bulking. And you get big on it, and it blows you up. But it's weird because your muscles don't look fluffy like they would on Dynabol, but they look more hard. So Anadrol's a really, really good one. So on this one, I recommend you take 50 milligrams a day for 4 or 5 weeks, and then you can readjust things from there. Maybe you want to go an extra week or two, maybe you don't. But Anadrol is one of those steroids. Let's say you got 4 weeks and you want to just look huge and big, just because, right? And you want to basically, what's going to happen is, those like tight shirts. You get on Anadrol for 4 weeks, those tight shirts will get even tighter on you because your chest will bulge out, your biceps will bulge out. This is one of my favorites right here, Anadrol. PharmaQo does a great Anadrol, really dummy proof. And it's not that expensive either for what it does for you. You can literally buy enough for the entire cycle for less than it costs you to have your car detailed. So it's a great steroid. Mobster, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, very quickly on Anadrol, annoyingly, Steve, I've never got anything out of Anadrol, but I know, and I've said this on other shows when we discussed Anadrol, that for some people, they will blow the both. Ironically, it's actually kind of a great drug for lean gains. But I know people that have taken Anadrol back in the past and absolutely blown the fuck up, and especially when if it's their first cycle they've ever done. I've heard of gains of up to 20 pounds. That wouldn't happen for me now. I'm too advanced to Stove Steve, so a gain of 5 pounds would be fabulous. But literally new to the game, new to using PEDs, and specifically new to Anadrol, and especially if this is the first cycle ever, blown the fuck up. I tell you, and I'm going to say the same thing about Anavar as well as Anadrol. I like the way that they present the sachets here for the orals, because what they've done, and this is super important, you don't think it is. If you present a product a certain particular way, and I'm actually thinking about comparing this to pre-workout products. A lot of pre-workout products are jazzy as fuck on the label. Cartoonish, 47 colors, rockets coming out of an elephant's ass, whatever. And they're almost kiddyish. And then they're trying to sort of go, oh, it's going to be crazy. This is what it's going to feel like when you take their product. When it comes to pharmaceuticals, you don't do that. What do? You present the product so it looks like a pharmaceutical. So even the sachets here, for the orals, for Anavar specifically, look like they would be the kind that you would pick up in a pharmacy or a chemist, as we say in the UK. Literally, that's how they've been presented to you. Like the sort of thing that you would get on prescription script from your doctor. That's how this should be. Now, they've got a great looking Anavar here, Steve. The one I'm looking at right now is a 10 milligram option, 100 tablets to a sachet. Steve knows that is literally one of my favorites. I'm actually thinking of running this for the next few days, Steve, for the thing I want to do on Monday. I love Anavar. And for me, it is a combination of lean mass gains. Back in the day when I would do Anavar on its own, 50 milligrams a day, I would run at that particular cycle. And it was always towards the end of a training cycle for strength. I would always get the kind of peak strength gains that I wanted to, especially if the training program had gone well. And I would only ever gain about 5 pounds. Now, if you are a bodybuilder and you're looking for muscular gains, 5 pounds doesn't sound that much. But as we say, these things, they add up. And if you change your training, your nutrition, etc., to keep your gains, very capable gains on Anavar. There's also, it's probably the #1 oral steroid, in fact, of both kinds of steroids, that we recommend and rate for women, for our female listeners, typically somewhere between 2.5, 5 milligrams a day. So again, for the ladies especially, a 10 milligram pill is a lot easier to split, and that's what they've done here. A lot easier to cut in half, so you know you're getting 5 milligrams or even into quarters, versus say a 30 or a 40 milligram pill. So again, the approach they've taken here means it's applicable to all users, male, female, the lower dose and the higher dose. Typical dosing, as I said already, optimal, they actually recommend on the site slightly less, but I think the optimal dosage for most male users between 30 to 50. I've always preferred 50, and 9 times out of 10, I'd recommend 50. If you're not used to it, 30 milligrams. And the only issue, really, apart from the obvious one with oral steroids, is the pumps. Horrendous pumps. My first time using Anavar, pain in my shins like I couldn't believe. Pumps were crazy. Lower back pumps, showing someone how to use a kettlebell for 2 fucking minutes. My back was pumps. So yeah, taurine and other products that we recommend on other.
So I'll mention a couple good stack options with Anavar Mobster. Maybe you can mention 1 or 2. But for me, when it comes to strength and really recomping, my favorite thing to stack with Anavar is Tren. And Tren is another one we're going to talk about a little later, specifically what kind of Tren options PharmaQo has, because they have plenty of Tren options. But Tren, look, somewhere between 200 to 350 Tren a week, and then running the Anavar somewhere like Mobster said. I like the 40 milligram area for Anavar, especially if you're stacking it. That's a good dose, but you can go 30 milligrams on some days as well, and you'll be perfectly fine. Some guys go as high as 60. I've seen some guys even go to 100 on Anavar.
I've heard of that as well, Steve.
But I
100,
don't
but
think they
that's
were
the
using. Yeah,
competition stack more. Yeah,
they weren't using good quality Anavar, because if you're using good quality like this, you don't have to go more than 60. So,
I
what is
can't
something you
imagine a
want to
pumps on 100 milligrams.
give me
Steve. They'd be
something you like to
horrendous.
stack with Anavar? A lot of people like to stack testosterone with it. We're going to talk about
Yeah, I was going to say
testosterone.
testosterone, Steve. I mean, Tren, as Steve said, is the recomposition drug of choice. Absolutely. But yeah, I like to keep it real simple. I know that Steve does. And when it comes to these kind of things, and I've mentioned this before, for some perverse reason, never did anything for me. But my buddies raved over it. That would be testosterone enanthate with Anavar. I can see this being absolutely amazing as a strength sack, especially for my strongman buddies versus my powerlifter buddies. I've also noticed, Steve, before we finish on Anavar, they do a 50 milligram option, and this would actually suit me down to the ground. But like I said, you've got that flexibility with the 10s that enables you to do other bits and pieces. So yeah, let's move on to the next one, Steve. And this won't all be orals. We're talking about injectables as well. They do a dianabolin, Steve, which I believe is just literally injectable debol. This is becoming more and more popular, and it's nice to see that their products on point here as well. And I think this is more for the competing bodybuilders, the advanced bodybuilders. I'm seeing more and more of these athletes doing injectable forms of debol pre-workout because it gets into the system that much quicker. And if you like a pump, and debol would probably be my pump product of choice. And I don't mean the uncomfortable VAR pumps, I mean the pleasurable debol pumps. And you want to feel swole, as they say, when you go to the gym and have your fucking muscles full of blood, then an injectable form of debol absolutely would be the way to go. Again, this is 50 milligrams a mil, so I would only be looking for 1 mil pre-workout, only on my workout days if I was going to go with it, Steve. So yeah, that's something that, again, our pet professional, the Weber Pro, that we both know the name of, he's actually doing this as well at the minute as a pre-workout. And I know, like me, he trains in the mornings, does what he does. It's a high volume guy. So the pump he must get off injectable debol first thing in the morning, like dianabolin, would be absolutely fucking amazing.
Yeah.
I think it might border on uncomfortable. Back to you.
Yeah, and Dianabol as well. If you scroll down, depending on where you're looking, but they also have obviously the oral Dianabol option, which is the #1 selling oral option ever in the history. I know in America, and I'm sure all over the world, because
Oh,
Dianabol is one of the most
yeah.
dummy-proof steroids out there, and you don't. It's cheap, and you don't have to use it very much and for very long to see results. So it's a great bulker. The appetite, the mood, the libido, especially if you react positively to estrogen when it comes to libido. Anytime you raise your hormones and estrogen together, usually libido will go up on most of the people. And that's what happens on Dianabol. So it's a great one. It's not going to put you in a shitty mood. So Dianabol is one of those where if you start stacking it with things like testosterone and DECA, you're really going to have a huge bulking effect, almost too much of a bulking effect where you move the scale. So just be careful. You want to make sure you use an AI with it, especially if you're stacking it. But even when you run it by itself, the Pro Mobster just mentioned, he does run 2 different AIs along with his cycle.
Yeah.
So he's covering himself. You don't want to turn into a bloated mess. But Dianabol from PharmaQo is a great option. If you've never tried the injectable, you might want to because it's a really cool one, like as Mobster said. Next one we talk about is completely opposite, drostanolone, which is Masteron. And Masteron is a great hardener. Most of you out there are going to benefit from Masteron when you're using 11% or lower, but it doesn't mean you can't use it when you're fatter than that. And some people do. Some people like the effects that it gives them even when they have more body fat and 15%, 18%. But some power lifters seem to like Masteron. But look, at the end of the day, Masteron, it's a cosmetic steroid. It's a straight DHT derivative. It doesn't aromatize into estrogen. And look, it's one of those steroids where if you're a professional on stage or you're competing even at a regional level, it's almost like you need to use Masteron because the guy next to you is using Masteron. So you got to
Yes.
try to keep up with them. But here's the thing with
Yes.
Masteron, using it by itself, pointless. It's not going to do much of anything except harden you up a little bit and maybe increase your vascularity a little bit, but it's not going to do anything of benefit. So the best way to use Masteron is to stack it. And some of the more popular things that guys like to use with Masteron when they stack it is testosterone, obviously, but also Tren. And Tren is one of the top steroids to use to when you're stacking Masteron, and it stacks really well with Masteron. So one of the things you can do is you can run 250 Tren, 500 mast, and you get really, really good results for a straight recomp. And you can add in some testosterone. In fact, those 3 Mobster, the Masteron, Tren, and testosterone, that's considered one of the best recomp stacks that you could put
Oh, yeah.
together.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
PharmaQo has you covered if you want to do that, or if you want to do a blend. They also have a blend, and they also have a blend with Masteron and Primo that is called let me scroll up here. It's called Androbolon 400. And this is one that you could do as well. So if you wanted to get more of a recomp and cutting stack, that would be an option for you. But Masteron is a great little steroid. When I used it, I'll bring you in a second, Monster. But I used it, I can remember a massage therapist, she was massaging
Yeah.
me, said, Steve, you've got the hardest muscles I've ever massaged in my life. And I thought to myself, I was like, why is she saying this? And I said, oh yeah, I'm in the middle of a Masteron cycle. So boom, that's what Masteron does for you. It hardens up your muscles, which may not be a good thing. If you don't care about that, why would you want your muscles hardened?
Yeah,
You know?
let me
So
touch on that, Steve. I will expand on this a little tiny bit. Okay, so two aspects. The one is it's kind of weird, and even I do it, Steve. I got train my biceps incredibly heavy one session and a little bit lighter, but focus on the contraction another 7. And even I'm like, how come my triceps and my glutes and this and that are really rock hard, but my biceps, this one feels hard, this one feels soft. So that's a psychological thing, and it's kind of an example for some fellas that they feel like they're flexing their muscle all the time, especially the younger listeners that go to the clubs and whatever else. And that sort of almost perception of having rock hard muscles is a kind of positive feedback thing more than anything else in terms of you're working out and you know your muscles are hard because you train. But in terms of the cosmetic aspect that Steve touched upon, this is the reality, right? It doesn't matter how hard your muscles feel. No one cares. They're not poking you with a fucking stick when you're on stage, but it gives the illusion and obviously the actual physical reality, but the illusion, because that's what we're looking at on stage, of almost a gnarly kind of grainy look when your body fat is lower. You can see some people with low body fat and their muscles look kind of swollen and bloated, even though they've got 8% or less body fat. It's the difference between looking like someone that dances for a living with a set of six packs, or one of those models that advertises perfume, and a top professional bodybuilder being in proper fucking ripped and dry shape. You know the difference when you see it. And trust me, as Steve says, I'd be very surprised if there's not one pro out there that isn't using Masteron for that hardening look, never mind the actual physical effect of how they want to appear on stage. Because that's what you're looking for, Steve. True, proper, stage-ready condition. It has to have that kind of look. I think the one or two pros, Dorian Yates springs to mind, that would have that grainy, almost skin-peeled, kind of almost like someone's hammered the muscle with a little hammer and got that kind of little indentations where you not only see the striations, you can almost see the sort of lumps and bumps under the skin. So yeah, that's Masteron, but you do need, as Steve says, you do need to be properly lean. They do, and I'll touch on this one as well, Steve. They do something called fast trip, which really I almost want it to be the
I
other
was
way
going to
around.
mention that because I just
Yeah,
mentioned, and the only
you
reason we
you
want to
mentioned
talk
the
about,
other one, which is a blend, and this is a blend as well,
yes.
Steve. So
So
yeah,
this
go
is
on.
a short ester of Test Probe, Tren Ace, and Masteron Probe. And one of the interesting things about Fast Trip Mobster, we get a lot of questions about this on the forums, but I also have a lot of clients when they come to me. They're like, Steve, I want to use Fast Trip. I'm not sure if I think it's a combination of things. Maybe they write it on the forum, but also I think it's word of mouth. And I think they have friends that used it that they know, and they absolutely look sick after using it. So, but this is what I was just talking about. This is one of the best recompers out there. And by recomping, we mean you build muscle and you lose fat at the same time. So this is the one, and Fast Trip is 150 milligrams. So it's 50 milligrams each of those short esters. So this one you'd run, like 3 cc's a week, for example, and you'd be
Yep.
getting 150 milligrams of each because it's 50 milligrams per milliliter. So that would be a interesting.
Let me expand a tiny bit, Steve. And look, right? Why do companies produce blends? Two reasons. One is because people have asked them to. So what the customer wants, the customer gets. The other reason, and this is what I think we should focus on, especially with this kind of product, is because you end up at some point running stacks, running combinations of steroids, and there's a certain synergy the way they're put together. We've come up with a couple of stack suggestions ourselves already at the beginning of this show. So the reasons again why. So you end up actually wanting, or if you buy these steroids individually, you end up running them in exactly the same ratios as a product that's been prepared for you. So in a way, Steve, they're literally not only are they producing what the customers ask for, they're producing what the customer will end up stacking in the ideal, the optimal ratio. And that's the reason why I've seen a bunch of companies do this. This product looks fabulous and exactly the right ratios again, all short-acting esters, hence the 3 cc's, probably injected 3 times a week, as Steve said, quick in and quick out of the system. It makes it ideal for a cut. Again, this is I could see something like this being used by someone that wants to get into shape, wants to get lean for a modeling gig, wants to look good on stage as a competing bodybuilder. Absolutely, Russell. I've run a very, very similar product just for a few weeks, and I've said it on a bunch of shows. My waist is still the same size as when I run that cut, Steve, and it was an almost identical product. So trust me, this ratio, this combination works, and they've got the product together for you. So PharmaQo have presented it exactly how you want it in the right ratios. You're going to love this. And again, guys, you still got to do it. You still got to train your fucking ass off. You still got to do the cardio. But PharmaQo is doing the rest for you. Back to you, Steve.
So let's get another one that you're gonna like, Mobster. Nandrolone. They have the Deca option, which is 300 milligram a milliliter, and they have the Nandrolone phenylpropionate option, which is 100 milligram a milliliter. And the good thing about Deca, I'll bring you in and talk a little bit about it. But Deca is one of those similar to Depot, increases your mood, increases your appetite, great for bulking. I ran Deca. Maybe the last time I ran Deca was like 3 years ago, but I used to run it a lot back when I was younger. I was more into the bulking thing when I was younger, but I ran it a few years ago just to help see what it would do for I was having some herniated disc issues, right? Maybe 4 years ago, probably. And what was interesting is initially it helped a little bit, but then, my issues didn't go away. But the point was I ran just a little bit of Deca, just like 100 or 150 milligrams a week, and my appetite still went up to an annoying amount. So Deca is definitely great for those of you out there who are either like Mobster, you guys are big powerlifter types, and you want to use something like this to boost your appetite so you're getting in your calories, or for skinnier dudes who are like, damn, I've really been busting my ass. I'm not seeing the type of gains I wanted. I want to get on something that's really going to push me. So Nandrolones are a really good option. A couple points on Nandrolone before you bring you a Mobster to give your tips. I recommend going high with nandrolone and low with testosterone. This will lower the estrogenic side effects, because a lot of people that run Deca and they're like, oh my god, I got gyno from Deca, I hate Deca. It's not that Deca gave you gyno, is that you were running too much testosterone with it, because when you combine the two, it's a gyno mess. It's bitch tits. You open yourself up for bitch tits and other estrogenic effects. So keep your testosterone low. The way I recommend running these nandrolones is run it 300 to 400 milligrams a week. Run testosterone lower, 150 or lower, even 100 would be good. And then run Proviron with it, 25 to 50. So PharmaQo has you covered all across the board with those options. And that would definitely keep your estrogen down. But if you are a good reactor to testosterone, you don't mind a little more bloat, then you can raise your testosterone more, but then you would need to use an AI with it. And that would definitely help. Do not run high amounts of tests and high amounts of Deca with no AI. You're asking for trouble. But look, it's a great steroid. Deca is a great steroid. And if you want to bulk up, if you want to get stronger, it's a great steroid, and it's very mild. You're not going to get night sweats on Deca. You're not going to shed your head hair like crazy on Deca. In fact, it's one of the best when it comes to head hair. You're not going to get a lot of other side effects on Deca. The side effects you get from Deca are really from your increase in weight. You increase your weight too fast, then your blood pressure goes up.
Yeah.
So that's not Deca itself causing that as much as your weight gain. And the thing is with Deca, it's a testosterone derivative, but they made it less androgenic and less estrogenic. So it's supposed to have less side effects than testosterone, which it should. But then when you start stacking stuff with it, then you get yourself into trouble. And another one too, a very, very advanced thing you could use with Deca is Tren. Very, very advanced. So this is someone who's used Deca before, someone who's used Tren before. You're in an advanced nature. You're in your 30s, maybe 40s, and you really want to take things to the next level. It's a really, really good one. Tren and Deca together with a little bit of Proviron. So that's how I would run Deca. Mobster, touch on Deca a little bit. I know you're a big fan.
Oh, I mean, as Steve says, I absolutely love it. And funny, ironically, I actually ran it was a 50-50 with me, testosterone blend, i.e. Sustanon. I always run it more or less the same. I think it was slightly lower on one than the other one, but I wasn't running it in the proportions that Steve did. But I wanted that bulk. I've told this story a bunch of times. I would go from 280 back in the day. I'm way more heavy than that now, but I would go from 280 to 300 pounds every single time I run this stack. I think it was slightly under 300 the first, and slightly over the 300 or thereabouts the second time, 301 or something the first. And again, ironically, I wasn't actually trying to stay heavy. I was literally just increasing my size, my bloat, the additional weight temporarily because of the greater leverage for me bench pressing, for example. And this is back in the day again. And of course, that combination of muscles is going to give me strength overall. So all my pressing, all my benching, all my squats would go up because literally the bigger muscles, about 2 inches all over at 10 pound a pop, that gave me greater leverage for strength. And I was quite happy. The only issue, and Steve's actually touched upon this, and this is why we talk about it as a bulking cycle. And if you've got appetite issues, was the appetite. I've told the story before, and this is great for some of you that struggle with appetite. So trust me, it's a bonus in that example. I would be eating my third meal of the day, and I would be thinking about the next meal while I was still filling my belly up with the food I'm eating right now. That's an appetite stimulant, to say the fucking least. Issues? There's no real issues. It's more of a preconception in that people have this idea, the preconception, that DECA heals your joints. It does not. In the lab, there's been an uptake, an uplift in collagen synthesis. In other words, your connective tissue slightly better on DECA, but really that's in the fucking lab. And again, that won't be at the kind of dosages that we're recommending for the gym. The reality of the situation is that you get a little that water, that blow makes your joints feel better while you're on DECA, and especially in the combination that I've used in the case of the test blend, aka Sustanon. Absolutely. But you're then lifting more weight, because that was my fucking aim. You're carrying around, as Steve said, the only issue again for me was the 20 pounds additional body weight. I lived in a little 2 up, 2 down, Steve, and I was going up one flight of stairs. When you've gained 20 pounds in a matter of weeks, your body's not used to it. So my fitness went out the window, literally just because of the additional 20 pounds. When you come off of DECA, any water that you're retaining, any muscle size that you've lost coming off cycle, and that was always my intent. I wasn't trying to keep those muscles in, meant that the joint had been lifting heavy weights, pounded harder than normal. In fact, if anything, you've made it worse. It does not heal your joints. And even if it does, it only heals your joints on cycle. Let's go back to the next one, Steve.
Yeah, so we got several more we want to talk about, Mobster. Next one, Proviron. I already touched on it. Great to use in a stack, but not solo. Just like I told you about Masteron. Using it solo is almost pointless. Some people will do it off cycle or maybe even in PCT. It's considered even more of as a drug than a hormone, because some people do have success using it in PCT or off cycle. So it's a good stack though, because Proviron does a really good job of binding the SHBG, and it will help your other steroids in your stack work better. So really you can stack Proviron, Mobster, with any steroid cycle. So if you want to touch on it, definitely chime in, or we'll move on to the next one. You want to chime in on Proviron a little bit, or move on? I guess you want to move on. So let's go Toronto.
Yeah, sorry, move on, Steve. Yeah.
So Toronto Ball is the next one. And I have a lot of respect for Toronto Ball, but a lot of you out there may not like it. You might find it to be a little bit of a waste. It's a weak oral, I consider it maybe a weaker version of Anavar. That's the way I would consider it. But like for me, for someone who likes to be active, let's say you like to go mountain climbing, you like to go swimming, you like to do kayaking, you like to do hours of fishing, 4 or 8 hour fishing trips, stuff like that. Toronto Ball is a great option because it won't mess with you. It won't give you side effects like these other steroids. You see what I'm saying? Like I went on a fishing trip for 8 hours and I was on tren, and I spent 7 hours of it throwing up, and I was urinating brown stuff. That's how bad, because tren is not a good option, because it's going to, tren does a lot of things in your body, makes you more nauseous, makes you more sick, makes you more hot. So at Toronto Ball, if I went on a fishing trip for 8 hours, even if I got seasick, I'd be okay. I want to be pissing out brown stuff. You see, it's got low side effects. So Toronto Ball is a really, really good option. And you can run anywhere from 20 to 30 up to 50 or 60 milligrams a day. You get really good results. I like 30 to 40 milligram area. And it stacks well with a lot of different things. Tren, you could stack a mild Toronto Ball with something more androgenic tren, or you could stack Toronto Ball with something mild as well, like Primo, or maybe low dose testosterone. It's a really good option. And you can use it solo if you want as well. So lots of different ways to use Toronto Ball. I have a lot of respect for it.
It helps with the tren side effects as well, Steve, as you and I discussed in a recent show. The cardio impact on tren is horrendous. and Turinabol was specifically created for the athletic Olympic athletes. Actually, one of the few drugs that we can talk about that's been created by a state, the East German, with Russian help state, put together for their athletes so that they wasn't bulking up and having issues with whether the athlete was male or female. That was a big time thing. And trend side effects, we know it has a massive impact on your cardio. You need to almost prepare with higher levels of cardio before a trend stack. And Turinabol helps you with your cardio, so it enables you to keep some, if not all, of your conditioning, Steve. And again, one thing I'll finish off on this particular thought with regards to the PharmaQo product is Turinabol is vastly underrated by the majority of users, and for some particular reason is absolutely rated very, very highly by pretty much any steroid guru, podcast, whatever you want to talk about. People think it's a mild steroid, and yet you have all the gurus I've ever watched of any other podcast or whatever, on the few times that I've clicked on them, or even reading in the magazines or whatever else, the gurus love Turinabol, but for some reason it's just not as popular as it should be with users, and that's kind of strange. I know maybe the other things are easy to use. What about the next option here, Steve, which is the PharmaQo Winstrol? Winstrol is ironically way more popular than Turinabol, and yet comes with its own little side effects in terms of the effects on the body. But there's a fabulous drug, and I'm probably going to say this, Steve. I think I would actually say the majority of cases run with a stack rather than run on its own. Jump in, Steve, quickly, because we're running out of time for this show, with some comments on the trend options that they have.
Yeah, and trend options, they have many options. They have not just the blends. We touched on trend a lot on this podcast. They have trend E, trend Ace, tri-trend, and then blends with trend. So lots of different trend blends. And trend really anywhere from 200 to 350 milligrams a week. A lot of professionals run it even higher. It's a very advanced steroid, so don't use it unless you're really, got to that point. Another one we want to talk about too. I think three more mobster that we have to touch on. Equipoise, testosterone, and Primo. So let's go over Equipoise first. Equipoise, we haven't touched on it yet on this podcast, but it's a very, very good one. I have a lot of respect for Equipoise, one of my favorite steroids. I think it's my favorite injectable of all at this point in my life. I like it because it's great for athletic boost. It's not going to mess with you. It's similar to T-Bol. So in fact, you could use Equipoise and T-Bol together, and they would provide you some really, really good results when it comes to athletics. So the Equipoise that I'm looking at here from PharmaQo, it's 300 milligram a milliliter. So really you can run 1 to 2 cc's a week, or you could do 1.5 cc's to give you a 450. And that would be a really good cycle to use to boost your performance and give you a mild gain. Primobolan, look, we touched on Primobolan earlier. Highly faked out there. The nice thing about the PharmaQo Primo is you don't have to worry about it being faked. And Primo is a great lean muscle mass builder. It's great for cutting. It's great for lots of different options. If you want to go more aggressive, you could stack Primo with Tren. I've done that before. So you get a mild option with a more harsh option, or you could do a light, mild cycle of Primo, Turinabol, or Primo, Anavar with a little bit of testosterone. That would be an option that you could do. Mobster, do you have any comments on Tren, Boldenone, Equipoise, or Primo? And then we'll get into the testosterone options.
One of the things about trend, I definitely, if you're running this 200, 300 milligrams a week, for me, I pretty much always advise you to be someone that's got experience with PEDs already. Make sure that you're aware of your research when it comes to using trend vis-a-vis the side effects. Get into condition, especially cardiovascular condition, before you run trend. I ran it as part of a cut stack. Recently, it's very similar products to what we discussed earlier on. I noticed the effects. It's the first time I'd ever used it. Recomposition, absolutely, Steve. Belt size went down, body weight went down. I actually started to add muscle towards the end of that particular stack. So for me, absolutely recomposition. But again, it's something you want to be kind of aware of for advanced users. EQ, like Winstrol for me, the only issue with that, and it completely depends on the user, is that some users will have side effects, some will not. So for example, I think it's on EQ, you can have issues with the hairline. On Winstrol, you can have issues with the joints. That's, again, condition dependent, diet dependent, whether you've got healthy oils in your diet. And again, dosage dependent. Literally, if you guys are running it high, you're more likely to have side effects than low. Are they popular? Of course, they both are, and absolutely running stacks by many people with great success. So yeah, on to the next one, Steve, as we get towards the end of the time.
Testosterone, and a lot of you out there, testosterone, it's the most used injectable. And some people like to use it for TRT. Some people like to use it as a base in their cycle. Some people like to use it solo at a higher dosage and just run it for their cycle. So PharmaQo has you covered. They have testosterone blends. They have steroid blends that include testosterone. We touched on a couple of them earlier. And they
Yep.
have also testosterone solo options. So and you can use it any which way. And a lot of guys, when they run it solo, they'll run 500 milligrams a week. They might stack an oral with it, maybe stack some T-bol with it, some Anavar with it, even some D-bol with it if you want a bulk. And that would be a good first cycle or second cycle, but that's going to be a great cycle. Don't think it's like a safe cycle, because it's not. You're still going to get shut down. You're still going to have water retention. So you want to make sure you're running your proper on-cycle supplements and on-cycle support ancillaries, your Aromacin, your Arimidex, and PharmaQo has you covered on that as well. So testosterone, a lot of different ways to run testosterone. You can stack it with just about anything on this list with success. You could stack it with Equipoise. You could stack it with Primo. That would be a good option. Some people like to stack it with Trend. That would be a crazy good option for strength and libido. If you wanted to go that way, if you're a good reactor to androgens, you get good results that way. So in my estimation, PharmaQo has you covered. There's lots of different ways. We're going to do more podcasts in the future on PharmaQo, and
Yep.
we're going to show you some other different options to run it. But at the end of the day, PharmaQo, they have you covered from A to Z. They
Pretty
have
much.
everything you need, from on cycle to post cycle, everything you need, and you're covered across the board when you're using PharmaQo. So we have a lot of respect for PharmaQo. Make sure you go check out their products. Make sure that you come on the forums, you ask questions, you get a log going, maybe get a PharmaQo log up, and you can post up pictures of your touchdown. You can post up pictures of your progress. We can see what you're doing. So come to the forums, guys and gals, evolutionary.org. Really, really fun. And
Post pictures of your
we're happy to see
touchdown.
you.
Let us know of your experience with the products. What was the results of your cycle? Let us know whether you had post-injection pain or not. We want to know these kind of things. You put them in. We've heard, the feedback we've heard is they're super smooth, zero PIP. So that's the sort of stuff that we want to know about. And again, listen to it. The way that we talk to these shows, we want to help you get great results. We rate and recommend PharmaQo as a great example of a brand that you want to look at. And we're seeing feedback, which is absolutely positive. And your information, your feedback, both in the comments section below on YouTube, etc., on the other social media, but especially on the forums, will help other users too. You'll help build the brand, you'll help build the reputation, and the success you have will inspire other users. And that's super, super important. As again, it's the reason why Steve and I do these shows. It's the reason why we rate and recommend certain brands. It's the reason why we review brands and we look down. We want to see professional products. We want great quality products going out to the users. We want to make sure that those users are being successful, getting stronger, getting more muscular, increasing the size of their biceps, getting leaner, getting into shape, looking amazing for the stage, looking amazing for the holidays. It's important to us. We love that kind of feedback personally. And we know that even if, listen, guys, if you post a comment, it's going to get 10 or 100 or 1,000 people that are not posting a comment, and they'll read what you have to say. That's how important it is for them. So you go, I tried this product. It was fucking amazing. I put an inch on my arms, 3 inches on my chest. I gained 15 or 20 pounds. People will be inspired in their journey, the same as we want to inspire and inform you. It's super, super important. Please note, we're not doctors and the opinions are ours. It is our view and based on our experience and views on the topic. A podcast for informational purposes and entertainment only. The freedom of speech and the First Amendment applies.